The tide does not appear to be turning in former President Donald Trump's favor after a second co-defendant in the election fraud case in Georgia, Kenneth Chesebro, joined Trump loyalist and attorney Sidney Powell in filing a guilty plea. Powell and Chesebro took plea deals in exchange for information about the other co-defendants in question, and it begs the question whether others will follow suit and flip on the ex-president.
Trump sought to distance himself from Powell, taking to Truth Social on Sunday, writing, quote, "Ms. Powell was not my attorney and never was. In fact, she would have been conflicted." Powell joined the Trump campaign's legal team in 2020, a position she very briefly held. Now, Chesebro's guilty plea brings prosecutor Fani Willis and her team closer to rounding out their case. And this is, the problem and the legal jeopardy that Donald Trump finds himself in, is that he was one of dozens of co-defendants in the Georgia indictment, but really all prosecutors want is Trump. He's the big kahuna. So they're going to get everybody else to accept plea deals in exchange for testifying against Trump. We know they will do this because this is how the justice system, this is how prosecutors work in all sorts of similar cases, in vast criminal conspiracy cases where they threaten lower and less connected defendants with, massive jail time to get them to cooperate. So they go after their main target. Their main target here is Donald Trump. You don't have to like that. You don't have to think that's fair. I am, by describing it, I am not endorsing it, but it is fact. It is a simple fact that Donald Trump is in tremendous legal jeopardy, owing to the way in Georgia specifically they have charged this case. They have been able to leverage Powell and all the others. There'll be, this is not the end of that. This is only the beginning in getting people to flip on Donald Trump, which is going to be an absolute disaster for him. And I, wonder if he's talking to whatever attorneys he has now. There was some news that one of them wanted to file to be withdrawn from the case, I believe. But these, whether attorneys are making him aware of the very tenuous position he's in.
Well, some legal commentators observed when the indictment was first filed, the writing was on the wall when you saw that there were 19 co-defendants in this case. The idea that Trump was going to be able to maintain kind of a code of silence and loyalty among 19 people was already kind of incredible, even if you weren't factoring in Trump's own behavior toward former staffers that we've seen play out over the course of the last 6 years or so. How many times have we seen someone who was no longer in Trump's employ characterized as bad and horrible and swampy, and it was a bad hiring decision? Trump is not one who has shown a lot of loyalty, frankly, to people who used to be a part of his team, even when they offer the most kind of soft and benign of criticisms of the administration. And so, this is in some ways is deeply unsurprising. I don't mean to do too much of a pop culture tie-in, but I did see Killers of the Flower Moon over the weekend, and those of you who have seen the new Scorsese movie will know that this is how it tends to go down. If you have a kind of broad criminal enterprise where you required a lot of people to be involved in an alleged scheme, those are all vulnerability points for you. And unless you can neutralize those by either protecting people or figuring out a way to make it untraceable between you and them, it's going to come back to you. And Trump, again, is also not someone who has been particularly discreet. He tends to court media and say things that are oftentimes inculpatory. The fact of the matter is that in the documents case, the most glowing piece of evidence against him is a tape recording of a video of an interview that he gave to a reporter when he thought he was defending himself as someone who was less accelerationist in terms of going to war with Iran, but in fact said on tape, and you can hear the wrestling papers in the background, that he had confidential documents that he knew were supposed to have been returned to the government. So this is the kind of guy he is, and I can't even begin to imagine the kind of exposure that's going to come as more and more of these 19 co-defendants go to trial.
Well, yeah, I mean, the personality characteristics that make him a very compelling political figure and a frankly beloved political figure. I mean, a polarizing one, but a beloved political figure among his base and among most Republicans, does not, make him, also makes him subject to incredible legal liability because he does say what he thinks. Even in that town hall he did with CNN, again asked about the stolen election claims, he just doubles and triples down on them. He makes new ones, in fact. I mean, look, he's running for president again. He's running to be the Republican nominee again. So he can't just like shut up, stay quiet, not talk about these things, follow legal advice to stop tweeting and truthing, or he's not tweeting, he's just truthing, although he's been invited to be back on X. He's not going to stop doing any of that because he's still running for president. He still wants to trash talk and badmouth. Many of the people running against him are running explicitly because of the election claims. Mike Pence is doing that. Chris Christie is doing that to a great extent. So I think he rightly thinks he can't avoid talking about these things, even as he's increasingly ordered to by the court, and at great risk for doing so. But it's just clear he's going to continue on his way and let justice be done, though the heavens fall.
Well, meanwhile, it appears federal prosecutors have set their sights on Australian billionaire Anthony Pratt, who gained access to Trump's inner circle in 2020, per the New York Times. In recordings obtained by 60 Minutes, Pratt appears to admit Trump revealed sensitive information to him, and a glimpse of how Trump operates behind closed doors. Let's listen.
He's outrageous. He just says whatever the he wants, and he loves to shock people. I hadn't even heard it. It hadn't even been on the news yet. He said, I just bombed Iraq today. And the president of Iraq called me up and said, you just leveled my city. And he said, and I said to him, okay, what are you going to do about it?
That seems to be part and parcel of what we were just talking about, Robby. And it should be noted, you alluded to this right before we went to that clip, that Trump has been fined $5,000 for almost immediately violating the gag order not to talk about court staff that we discussed last week.
Sure. I mean, the only thing I'll say about this story, which I think has come to the Australian billionaire, it has I think a certain fascination for the mainstream media because they want to demonstrate and prove that Trump not only kept these documents or was reckless with some trivial documents, but was leaking important national security stuff to foreign entities or friends and all that. Again, that might very well be the case. This figure sounds kind of boastful to me. Trump is notoriously has a lack of caution, so I'm perfectly willing to believe, but I need to be shown more, and I do have a worry and a wariness about how the national security apparatus wants to protect itself with respect to Trump. Describe Trump as the reckless person with respect to U.S. foreign policy, even as our generals and our national intelligence experts, they think it's reckless to not send money everywhere and become involved in every conflict across the globe. They think Trump is a uniquely dangerous figure because he at times spoke against doing that and also fought them, not in a often in an unsuccessful way and in a confused way, and not a very one based on his own deeply held commitments or something, but he was an obstacle and an annoyance to the kind of groupthink that pervades Washington on foreign policy matters. So I'm always looking for the efforts they will go to smear him on this front, and I'm smelling a little bit of that here, but I don't know.
Well, Donald Trump still holding strong as the GOP front-runner. We'll continue to cover that horse race. Stick around. More Rising for you right after this.